He's sitting on his sofa. 2 Rottweilers at his feet. A folder open on his desktop. Beheadings, executions, children in military gear holding severed heads. Then a notification. A direct message. No text. Just a close-up photograph of a severed human neck. Sent to his personal Twitter inbox by a self-professed ISIS supporter. A reminder that the people he was hunting knew exactly who was hunting them. His name, or at least the only name anyone knows him by, is Mikro. An unemployed web designer somewhere in Europe. No government clearance, no military backing, just a battered laptop and a decision he made alone. He declared war on ISIS. And what he actually pulled off, what it cost him, and what it eventually tore apart, is so much stranger and darker than anything the headlines told you. Before Mikro ever opened that laptop for his 16-hour shifts, somebody had to actually declare the war. August 2014. An anonymous affiliated Twitter account fired off a message that read like a rallying cry typed in the dark. Full-scale cyberwar against ISIS. They called it Operation ISIS. The people who answered that call were not who you'd picture. Not intelligence analysts in secure facilities. People like Mikro, working out of his apartment, a girlfriend who knew what he was doing, a neighborhood that had no idea. He told one journalist he was spending 15 to 19 hours a day. Not for pay. Just because he looked at what ISIS was doing online and decided he had to try to stop it. What he built was called Control Security, named after a secret World War II British intelligence unit. Started in February 2015 as an anonymous offshoot, the mechanic was almost absurdly simple. A team of 28 volunteers, many fluent in Arabic, manually hunted pro-ISIS Twitter accounts around the clock. Verified accounts got added to a blacklist. That blacklist went out in automated batches several times an hour through 4 linked accounts. Then his followers mass reported every flagged account to Twitter. No hacking. No breaking in. Just organized, relentless human pressure, applied at scale every single day. Mikro said he'd lost count of the death threats by that point. When asked if he took them seriously, his answer was the kind of thing you only say when you've sat with real fear long enough to make a decision about it. He said he knew it was very real. He just couldn't let it affect him. Because he was already too deep in. And the scale of what he was doing was staggering. Mikro claimed ControlSec was identifying between 200 and 600 pro-ISIS accounts every single day. Claimed the group had helped remove somewhere between 60 and 70,000 accounts total. That number, if accurate, actually exceeded the Brookings Institution's own conservative floor estimate of 46,000 pro-ISIS accounts active at the end of 2014. Twitter publicly called lists like his wildly inaccurate. But Michael S. Smith II, a counterterrorism advisor to the U.S. Congress, told the journalist something very different. That at a time when the government was more focused on monitoring ISIS online than disrupting it, ControlSec's volunteer effort was, in his words, invaluable. That tension, official dismissal, private praise, infuriated Mikro. He'd tried early on to share his blacklists directly with Twitter. They never got back to him, so he kept going. and ISIS noticed. They adapted. Suspended accounts vanished and reappeared under new names, rebuilding from scratch. 2,000 gone. Then 5,000. Then 2 weeks of nothing. Then 10,000 at once. It wasn't a victory. It was a grind. And then GhostSec, the other operation Mikro helped run, did something that changed everything. While ControlSec was doing social media cleanup, GhostSec was doing something almost nobody watching from outside knew was happening. They had placed moles inside ISIS online communities. Not bots. Not scrapers. Actual human operatives posing as jihadist sympathizers, burrowing into forums, earning the trust of people planning real attacks. That's not a small shift. That's the difference between a neighborhood watch and an intelligence agency. July 2015. GhostSec's operatives, monitoring a group of jihadists, picked up signals of a planned mass killing in Tunisia. A copycat of a beach resort attack that had already killed 38 tourists that summer. The target, Jerba, home to one of Tunisia's oldest Jewish communities. The threats were specific. A suicide bomber. Direct references to British and Jewish tourists. 2 named churches where those tourists were attending services. This wasn't vague online bluster. This was operational chatter. And GhostSec had it in their hands. The problem? They were hacktivists. They'd spent their entire existence avoiding law enforcement. And now they were sitting on intelligence that could save lives, with no channel to get it to anyone who could act. So one of them did something almost comically improvised for a supposed shadow intelligence unit. He reached out to a counterterrorism expert he'd seen quoted in the New York Times, Michael S. Smith II, co-founder of a small South Carolina security consultancy. Advisor to the U.S. Congress. Smith took the call seriously. Passed the intelligence to the FBI. The FBI forwarded it to Tunisian authorities. 2 days later, GhostSec was debriefed. Arrests had been made. Smith later confirmed publicly the data had been helpful to authorities in Tunisia, who disrupted a suspected Islamic State cell around July 4th. 17 suspects arrested. Think about that. A guy in an apartment running a volunteer operation, funded by nobody, using methods no government had authorized, led to the arrest of a terrorist cell planning a mass casualty attack. The Tunisia plot wasn't hypothetical. It was real, confirmed by a named official with direct access to the intelligence chain. And yet, the public credit went nowhere near them. Smith was careful with his language. Said GhostSec was not working for me or with me per se. The FBI never confirmed their role. The US government said nothing. And Twitter, whose platform GhostSec had been cleaning for months, kept calling their blacklists wildly inaccurate. Even as every major suspension wave seemed to follow accounts ControlSec had already flagged. After Tunisia, Smith formalized the arrangement. Became a relay point, a funnel, through which GhostSec's raw intelligence could reach law enforcement without navigating government bureaucracy themselves. By November 2015, that arrangement had grown so formalized that GhostSec officially rebranded, cut ties with Anonymous entirely, renamed themselves Ghost Security Group positioned themselves not as hacktivists, but as a professional boutique counterterrorism consultancy. The group that started as a guy on a sofa with 2 Rottweilers was now briefing U.S. intelligence officials. But the moment they stepped into that legitimacy, the war inside the operation started. Because Anonymous, for all its chaos, had one principle holding it together. You don't take money from outsiders. The moment the word boutique entered the conversation, the old guard started asking who exactly was benefiting and who was in charge. A hacker named Wachula Ghost, one of GhostSec's most active operators, pushed back hard. So did another member, Tor Reaper. Their accusation wasn't subtle. Leadership was using the reputation built on thousands of hours of unpaid volunteer work to build a private business. The volunteers doing the actual hunting, reading Arabic forums at 2 a.m, weren't going to see a cent of the consulting fees, weren't going to be named. Digita Shadow, the group's executive director, went public with the accusation. He did not go quietly. What followed was the kind of collapse that happens when idealism meets money, and nobody has a contract. The group split into 2 openly hostile camps, each side accusing the other of being reckless, ineffective, or outright fraudulent. Every number that had ever come out of GhostSec suddenly had a competing version. And ISIS, watching all of this, did not slow down. By late 2015, ISIS's online operation had evolved specifically in response to the pressure. Mirror accounts, encrypted channels, private Telegram groups operating entirely outside Twitter's reach. A Brookings Institution study found that even when accounts were suspended, users typically rebuilt their followings within weeks. The disruption was real, but it was never permanent. Then, November 2015, the credibility crisis arrived. Fast. Ghost Security Group announced they'd disrupted an ISIS plot targeting Paris. Days after the November 13th attacks that killed 130 people, the timing alone made it explosive. The problem? Nobody could verify it. Not the FBI. Not French intelligence. Not even Michael Smith, their most credible validator. The Tunisia operation had a named official, a confirmed arrest count, a paper trail. The Paris claim had none of that. And in the world Ghost Security Group was trying to enter, where credibility is the only currency that matters, an unverifiable claim at the worst possible moment isn't a minor setback. It's a defining one. Wachula Ghost had always operated on a completely different philosophy from Mikro. Where Mikro built structure, Wachula Ghost built chaos. He hacked directly into ISIS accounts and replaced their content. Started as a teenager, taught himself on a computer he bought, disassembled, and couldn't get back together. He worked alone, answered to no one. The contrast was starting to look less like a difference in style and more like a difference in survival strategy. Late summer 2016. GhostSec merged with Black Ops Cyber, a private outfit affiliated with an international corporation. The group that started as a guy on a sofa with 2 Rottweilers was now formally absorbed into a corporate structure. Wachula Ghost took one look at that merger and walked away entirely. kept his anonymous stance, kept fighting alone, under a new alias, Ghost of no nation, no structure, no leadership, no consultancy fees, just him, his methods, the same targets. That split. Wachula Ghost walking one direction, the institutional version walking another, is the most honest summary of what the whole experiment produced. Because what those 2 years actually tested was whether volunteer hacktivism could survive contact with legitimacy. And the answer was, only if it stayed small enough to be invisible. The moment you tried to scale it, formalize it, give it a name and a revenue model, money, credit, accountability tore it apart from the inside. Mikro's ControlSec, at its peak, identified up to 600 accounts a day. The Tunisia operation produced 17 arrests. Those were real. But they happened when the operation was still small enough that nobody was fighting over who owned the results. The moment the results became valuable enough to fight over, the fighting started. And it cost more than the operation could afford to lose. What the whole arc actually revealed, from the declaration of Cyberwar, through the death threats and the atrocity folders, through Tunisia and Paris and the split and the merger, is that the internet's war on ISIS was never really one war. It was dozens of individual people in individual apartments with no oversight and no safety net, trying to do something governments were either unwilling or too slow to do. Some burned out. Some walked away. Some, like Wachula Ghost, just kept going alone, because alone was the only version that ever made sense to them. The disruption was real. It was never permanent. They were not soldiers with a tour of duty. They were volunteers with no exit date, looking at severed heads over breakfast, waiting for Twitter to move, and doing it again the next day. That is what actually happened when Anonymous declared war on ISIS. Not a victory. Not a defeat. A few real disruptions. A confirmed arrest count in Tunisia. An organization that fractured under the weight of its own ambition. And a handful of people who kept going anyway. Because stopping, for them, was never really an option they considered. If this one got under your skin, subscribe. Because next, we're going even deeper into the war nobody declared, but everybody's still fighting.